Good day once again to all my dear students. This is Miss M.K. Vinita from the PG Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, continuing with my efforts to help learning during the COVID-19 times. This presentation is meant for third semester BA BSc students of Calicut University, dealing with the chapter The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, prescribed for the Common Course ENG 3A05 from the text signatures. This is a very interesting selection from signatures and its last module, diaries and letters. Our text has got snippets which have been taken from the book The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole. Snippets, SNIPPETS, means excerpts or pieces taken from an original text. The original Adrian Mole books include a series of 9 books. Written in a comic vein, these books are hilarious account of various episodes in the life of Adrian Mole. So this can be called a fictional diary. Since 1980s, fictional diaries have been used for many purposes and have been enjoyed by children and adults alike. These are a few examples of very popular fictional diaries where the characters are imaginary but they are very realistically presented. Do bear in mind that the diary of Anne Frank is not a fictitious one. It was written by a real girl who lived during the Nazi regime, and this is how Anne Frank's diary is different from Adrian Mole. These are a few diaries you can refer to if you are interested to go through them further. One is Alice, I think, by Susan Juby. Another one, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which you must be very familiar. You can see the very popular figure of Wimpy Kid on top onto the extreme left of the slide. A third one, The Basic 8 by Daniel Handler. And a fourth sample that you may try is the Dark Diaries by Rachel Rennie Russell. Let's get introduced to the characters featuring in these diary entries. Of the diary entry of Adrian Mole. As you read each entry, keep adding fresh details to these character sketch. Through the first 2 diary entries, we get introduced to the family of Adrian Mole and also to a girl called Pandora, whom he calls his first love. So the characters in his family include his father, his mother, his grandmother features in the original diary, who doesn't feature in the snippets you have got to study. And there are also minor characters whom he talks about, like his neighbors, his teachers, his librarian, etc. Now, David Williams, who wrote the foreword to The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, calls the book a genuine phenomenon. The fictional account has been rendered very realistically that the reader feels that they are episodes from someone's real life. The immediate appeal may be as a series of jokes. So keep in mind, what makes the work very special and interesting, even in spite of being a fictional account, is that it has been rendered so realistically, not merely as a series of jokes, but they look like episodes from someone's real life. Please bear in mind that something that is realistically presented need not be a reality. When something is realistically presented, it is shown in a way that represents things as they are in real life. This association, when we discover, or the connection when we are able to establish as we read, helps the reader think and respond to what is presented. Whereas reality is something that is actually experienced or seen, as in the case of Anne Frank. So please remember, a realistic presentation, it cannot be written using the word it is a reality. So this diary has been called a genuine phenomenon because of its realistic representation of certain facts that are connected to a particular period. And somebody asked the writer, Sue Townsend, why she introduced a fictional character, Adrian Mole, who is a boy, and why not a girl. So, in response to that, what she said was, girls are sociable, they talk to each other about their emotional lives, but boys don't. So, much research has been conducted to find out how boys think, how they behave, what are their concerns and anxieties in real life, etc. So, I remind you once again, don't take this as merely a series of jokes. There is much more to the Secret Diary of Adrian Mole than something to laugh at. The first diary entry of January 14th, Wednesday, tells us that he joined the library and he borrowed 3 books. The books are Care of the Skin, Origin of Species, and Pride and Prejudice. And while talking about his choice of books and the entries he has made in the library, we understand that he feels proud that he could impress the librarian. This makes us realize that as a teenager, he enjoys that. He also makes a statement that, I quote from the text, perhaps she is an intellectual like me, and also, quote again, she didn't look at the spot. These statements reveal adolescent angst. I use the word adolescent angst, ADOLESCENT which is one of the primary themes of this novel. Adolescent angst means a severe feeling of anxiety accompanied by dilemma and frustration. So, this diary entry shows his efforts to impress people and his obsession or preoccupation with the spots on his face. Humor arises out of his self pretensions as being an intellectual and comparing himself with the librarian. When talking about the teachers, he reflects a kind of indifference about his teachers, and he has written in the diary that they'll be sorry once he becomes famous. This observation is also humorous as well as reflecting a teenager's anxiety of not getting affectionate attention. The third character whom he introduces through the first diary entry is Pandora. Now, there is a mythical story called Pandora's Box, and in connection to that, maybe he, as a part of introducing Pandora, he says she likes being called Box. She is the love of Adrian's life, and it's a typical teenage fantasy he reflects when he says, I quote from the text, it's time I fell in love. After all, I am 13, 3 by 4 years old. So that shows how a teenager expects or what are his expectations of things that should happen in his life as a teenager. We all know that teenage is a kind of confusing stage. They are neither considered kids nor are they considered adults. So all these are parts of the adolescent angst. Now, the diary entry of 17th January, Saturday, shows his visit to Dr. Taylor, who is the GP or the general practitioner. Now, Adrian Mole is not very impressed with the general practitioner, Dr. Taylor, because the doctor tells him to count his blessings and to be happy. Now, this response is made by the doctor when he told the doctor about his bad home life and poor diet, but the doctor doesn't take it very seriously. Moreover, the obsession with spots is something that Adrian Mole is very worried about, but even that is not taken seriously by the doctor. So he says he doesn't examine his spot, and reading deeply into these lines, there is a strong criticism on National Health Service and the overworked general practitioners. And these two comments, though he is talking as an adult but in a teenager's worldview, he points out to the deficiencies during the reign of Margaret Thatcher. So, this way, this diary entry can be seen as a satire or as a social commentary. Now, reading between the lines means seeing beyond what is comic and what is superficial in the text. As we mentioned earlier, to enjoy the book to its core, one has to go beyond the superficial reading of the text as a series of jokes. These are four prominent themes that can be seen recurring throughout the entries. One is adolescent angst. As we proceed with the rest of the diary entries, please mark these as examples for themes that you can think of. For example, the general practitioner and the boy's observation are cynical observations on the National Health Service. So this can be cited as a criticism or a satirical or sardonic social observation made by the writer through the diary entry. The writer is actually using a teenage boy and his ingenuousness or his naive or inexperienced quality, or you can use the word gush, G-A-U-C-H-E. I repeat the spelling, G-A-U-C-H-E, which shows the inexperienced quality of an ingenuous or naive teenager. Naive means again lacking experience and sophistication. So all that reflects the adolescent angst and obsession and the intellectual perception are all reflected through a teenager, which must make us think beyond the life of a teenager. Now, Hindustan Times has written this about Sue Townsend's character Adrian Mole, and these words must be kept in mind while thinking about his character. G-A-U-C-H-E, Gesh, observant, and the acute awkwardness of adolescence. At the same time, he is an ingenuous. An ingenuous boy is someone who is genuine. So this is what the Hindustan Times commended upon Sue Townsend's writing. The author uses the ingenuous but sympathetic character and his diary to make political and social points about British society in the 1980s and 90s, from the Margaret Thatcher government to the new mood of Blair's Labour government. This is just to remind you once again that this is not to be taken purely superficially as a series of jokes, but as a social commentary and as a satire. And this is another comment I have taken from some other source about the writer Sue Townsend. Her novels featured wry humor. Wry means sarcastic or a dry humor, mocking various aspects of British society. So her novels featured wry humor, social commentary on class and economic inequalities, and an independent feminism and socialism. The working classes were seen as separate to the pro-royal Marx and Spencer set. Now, in the beginning I said there are only snippets that are given as a part of your study here. So, though not part of this book, she calls those rich people with money, education and sophistication and manners as the Marx and Spencer set. Adrian Mole in this novel is a representative of the lower middle class. So whatever is mentioned in the diary entry can be seen as a part of the realistic representation of the middle class life of the Thatcherian England. So this is just part 1 of a series that I plan to continue with. Before we conclude part 1, try to attempt these questions in about 100 words as well structured paragraphs. Your paragraphs must have main ideas, supporting statements, and illustrations wherever possible. Question number 1: what is his criticism against the school teachers? Second one: discuss the anxieties of Adrian Mole as reflected in these two entries. And the third one: what is his impression of Dr. Taylor? When you talk about Dr. Taylor, you can also reflect upon what does Dr. Taylor represent of the National Health Service, and how can this reference to Dr. Taylor be taken as a sardonic or the satire on Thatcher's England. Now, as you write, to create impressive responses, what we always need is the apt vocabulary and beautiful sentence structures. So, kindly refer to this website to enrich your vocabulary as you write. The website is www.visuwords.com. This is a visual dictionary that can help you with plenty of synonyms, antonyms, and all other required vocabulary that can make your writing beautiful. So keep reading, keep writing. We'll meet you again with part 2 of The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole. Stay home, stay safe, stay positive. Bye for the time being.